Hi, folks. How we doing? We got quite a great crew here, right? Very nice, very nice. Um, all right. I've been asked to remind everybody at every event what exactly the Writers Project is. And it's a good day to harken back to the beginning of it when in something like 2002, the founder, Professor Lale Davidson, right here, started focusing on bringing the work and wisdom of writers spanning the spectrum from insightfully local to award winningly international to students, colleagues, and community members to continue the conversations that we all should be having in a free society, or so I like to say, right? And on our last event for the semester, we have Lolly who started this. I think it's an appropriate bookend to a professorial career whose effects will be felt for decades, I'd say, right? And so I should say a few words about Professor Davidson, right? The patron saint and founder of the Writers Project, began her academic career humbly taking her BA in sociology and anthropology from Oberlin College in 1985, and then moved into what appears to be her lifelong passion, taking her Doctor of Arts at SUNY Albany in 1992. Following both her passion for the art and craft of fiction and the passing of the torch to young writers in college classes, Lolly has amassed quite the haul of awards and distinguished honors over her eventful career. Her novels, Blue Woman Burning, Against the Grain, and Beyond Sight, were published by Emperor Books between 2021 and 23. And her collection of fabulous fiction, that I think we'll hear from today, Strange Appetites, won the Adirondack Center for Writing's People's Choice Award in 2016. She's also been awarded the honorific of Distinguished Professor in 2015 and received the Chancellor's Award for Excellence in Scholarship and Creative Activity in 2017. Of her work, Professor Davidson says that she is instinctively drawn to literature where reality is just a little off the beaten track, where the unconscious world takes form and ideas talk, walk, and breathe, and where the language is so taut that it bounces you like a trampoline into a slightly altered state, like a low dose of strong medicine. May we all leave a little bit altered for the better. And with that, help me welcome Professor Lale Davidson.
Thank you. I don't know about so taut at the trampoline. That was my metaphor. I don't know that I achieved that. It was a good one. I like trampolines. Here, I'll just keep my timing. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming out. I really appreciate it. And I had other thoughts, but they've gone now. I'm surprisingly nervous for a teacher of public speaking and somebody who's done this a lot of times. So bear with me. And this, I feel very tall, and this feels very short. Yeah. So, my fiction writing has always had an autobiographical bent to it. And I used to see that as a failure of imagination when I was younger. I was like, I should be making these things up. What's wrong with me? And over the years, I've come to understand that a lot of people who are writing fiction are borrowing from their lives because it's I think, first of all, there's many people who think that there's no way that you can actually get inside somebody else's mind and experience what they experience authentically. And people are so complex that it intimidated me, this idea that I should somehow invent somebody whole cloth. Um, so what I found is that most writers are borrowing from themselves. Either they're basing characters on some unexpressed aspect of themselves, somebody they wish they could be, somebody they're afraid that they are, parts of themselves that they suppress or repress, and also pieces of other people. And usually the way that we get around incriminating people is to make composite characters. So we, give them different physical attributes, and we mix. We will, the mother and and the mother in my novel Blue Woman Burning, really that isn't my mother, but it's I've taken aspects of her and aspects of my father and also fantasy and kind of melded them together. So um, the first thing I wanted to talk about, though, I was diagnosed with ADD when I was 50. And, you know, long story there. But when they gave me the diagnosis, I was like, I go down the checklist, late for everything, check, don't understand time, check, um, and a whole host of other things that you wouldn't expect. Um, I suspect that my love of weird fiction, of genre, that this kind of fabulous genre that kind of straddles kind of magic realism, is actually an expression of my neurodiversity. Because I'll bet the thing about people with ADD is we like to be entertained all the time, and we don't like things, anything, any repetition, anything that's old. And and therefore, I think reading writing that's very stylized, the words are always making perking your interest, and you're always going, "Ooh, oh, ooh," like that, you know. And it's kind of, and maybe we need that stimulation. So there's kind of a debate, you know, like fiction writers, traditional fiction writers, you know, sort of feel like the characters in the plot are what takes the front seat, and style sort of takes care of itself. And you don't want the style to be overwrought and intrusive, intruding on your characters. But I've always loved highly stylized fiction. I've always loved fiction where people are doing strange gyrations with the language. And I think that maybe is because I have ADD. That's my current theory. I'll do some research and let you know if I turn out to be right. But I think also maybe because with ADD, you know, reality, what people consider reality, feels a little surreal to me, sort of all the time. Like it's the, you know, again, the reason I'm sort of drawn to slightly bent sort of depictions of reality is because that's kind of what feels real to me. And so I'm trying to show you how I see the world. And and I wonder too if that isn't an ADD thing, because it's not that we lack attention, it's that we're paying attention to everything. And when you pay attention to everything, the world is pretty strange. And the emphasis, I think also people with ADD don't filter things the same way, or we have trouble filtering things. So when you don't filter things, you get this very surreal effect. So here's some like very ordinary, these are just taken from my life. They're not personal per se, but they are, you know, like this is how reality seems to me. It's called Price Chopper Resurrected. Every night, men descend from the ceiling and veil the counters in plastic, then rearrange. In the morning, the ketchup is on the other side of the aisle and the pesto is in the deli. The bakery is in the middle of the store instead of on the side, and the entrance is to the left. New walls have appeared, old walls have disappeared. Each morning, Price Chopper resurrects itself differently. The center that was empty is now full of aisles stacked high with goods. The floors are now tiled more expensively than most customers' homes. Cash registers have been chopped and reincarnated into elegant checkout counters. Employees don't know where to report, and dazed customers mill around, searching for their lost peanut butter and frozen fries. No one can remember what color the walls used to be, but now they are cantaloupe with red accents. The health food section has vanished. The soy milk has migrated to baking goods, and the dried peas are stacked in international. Even the vegetables are stacked differently, beautifully, inside black rectangles. Red lettuce blooms vertically in a row below the green scallion paintbrushes and carrot exclamation marks. What was merely large has become colossal. When in the dairy section one remembers the parsley, returning to the vegetable section gives one pause. It's so far away. Senior citizens could power walk the track size perimeter every morning if paramedics would only be on call in the meat department. Each day, people adjust to this new arrangement, but the next morning, the milk has been removed to refrigerators along the edge, and the deli is now catty corner. Or is it? No, it hasn't moved at all. Everything else around it has moved. And where is the angel hair pasta? And where is the hummus? And why is the crumbled blue cheese in the refrigerator all by itself? How long has this gone on? The future is uncertain. A tiny old man hops in aisle 5, trying to reach the towering chocolate milk mix that used to be at knee level. Someone help him! People on endless quests open and close the doors of quarter-mile refrigerators, rubber seals hugging and sucking in percussive bursts. Ah, the paralyzing splendor of abundance, the vertigo of one-stop shopping. Who knew that markups could bear such inexhaustible fruit? Yeah, so that really happened. They did. They were renovating and renovating and renovating. And the next time they renovated, I didn't even see it happen. I just amazing. All right. This is another little moment like that. Hey, Holly. Pigeon Lady. So this was the I had this disastrous and brief first marriage that I'll mention in another excerpt. Um, and so this was like happened, while I was still married to this person called Pigeon Lady. What do I want most in the world? I walk with my new husband and 2 socialite friends through Central Park. The fan-shaped ginkgo leaves have turned yellow and flutter down. The low gray sky is beginning to let down water. My cold hands tangle in the holes of my coat pocket. A coat my husband has begged me to replace. It reflects badly on him, he says. I step ahead of them. A ruffled explosion startles me, and I swivel to see a flock of pigeons burst into flight like 100 sheets unfurled and snapping in storm wind. Angling straight for my head, they beat the air with feather and bone. I duck and turn, and swirling out of my previous orbit. They cross over me, their destination the other bank, and descend slowly, whirring all around an old woman I had not seen standing there before, a woman whose hair is much too black, thick, and long for her age, a woman who stands facing me with an enormous black plastic bag of crumbs. I cannot make out her eyes at that distance, only the thick kohl eyeliner. But her chin is up, and she seems to be looking straight, not around, not up or down at the pigeons framing her, but straight across at me. For a second, with the pigeons graphing the air at even points from high to low, from deep to shallow, the woman is suspended in midair like a Magritte painting of floating businessmen. What I want is for this woman whose figure has caused a riot of flapping wings, this woman whose face is deeply lined, whose orange red lipstick stands out across the grays of late fall. I want this woman whose arthritic hands pat a pigeon nestled in the hollow of her neck under her frazzled plastic black hair, this homeless woman who must have picked the garbage for her bag of crumbs or struck up an acquaintance with the cooks of certain restaurants. I want this old woman to lift her eyes and say, I bless you. Thank you so much. So, yeah, those were just some little observations of the weird reality, the weirdness that is reality through my eyes. This next piece I'm going to read for you is kind of a longer piece. I think it'll take about 15 minutes to read. It's called Calling Down the Mountain. And it's in this book of short stories, but it's not really a a short story. It's really, I think, I mean, first of all, it's true. Everything in it is as true as I could make it. So it's not fiction. And it's maybe not a story either. I think it's more like a collage essay. And this kind of goes back to, I mean, one of the reasons I love flash fiction, which is what I teach in my fiction class, is because it's a hybrid form. It's a form that breaks all the rules, and that again, kind of that we like that in ADD land. And so I think correspondingly having forms. I think you poets know that form and content are one thing. Like the content almost determines the form. So that's what this is. It's chopped into pieces. You can't really see the separation on the page, but I'll pause so you can kind of feel them. It's chopped into pieces, I think, because when we go through something that's painful, often, especially trauma, and I wouldn't say this was trauma for me, but when we go through something painful, sometimes it's the way that we make it bearable is to chop it into pieces and tell it out of order. So let me see. Another interesting thing happened to me as I pulled this story out, and it's been this way. I mean, I think I wrote it soon after. This is about my friend Tim Pantaleone, who I dated like for like a year, and then we broke up, and then we were friends, and then he moved away. And I think I wrote this around the time of his disappearance. And then I rewrote it in 2016. And then when I pulled it out yesterday, I was like, oh, shoot, I need to change that. And I did read that some other authors are like that. They're like, it's never done. The piece is never done. And it's fair to rewrite your work and publish them in different forms. So I've rewritten this a little bit. Calling down the mountain. 1 minute he was fixing his landlady's door, the next minute he was gone. He took nothing with him. He had come to Oahu only 6 weeks before in a final attempt to begin a new life. He had canoe practice that evening at 5:30. He was one of the only whites ever allowed to join the native Hawaiian team. After 3 days of absence, his landlady called his mother in New York. His sister flew out. By the time she found his bike at the foot of a trail up the Ko'olau mountain range, 6 days had passed. After a 2-day search with helicopters and dogs, the police called it off. No person who has gone missing for more than 48 hours has ever been found on Oahu. We had all flown 5,000 miles to search for him. The mountain says nothing. It stands with its green heads wreathed in clouds. The ridge where his bike was found lunges upward to the King Kong Wall, as we have dubbed it, the Ko'olau Range. Steam rolls up from the crevasses at the top like hair, keeping the peaks veiled until noon or sometimes all day. The mountain walls are green and deeply cut like downward grasping fingers. Pele pushed the mountain up. The violence is in the form. The mountain stands. We who loved him stand at its foot looking up. We shade our eyes. We pray. The mountain says nothing. The mountain is inviolable. We try to imagine which way he went. He might have gone straight up the sharp ridge, which climbs fast and narrows to a fin 8 inches wide and brings us to our hands and knees over a 200-foot drop. We who once encircled him twine ourselves along the steep slope, wedge ourselves behind trunks to gain another foothold, and fight through the vines that strap us at waist and ankle. Trees close to the wall of the mountain catch boulders the size of curled bodies. Vining ferns cover the lower slope. A body dropped into them would be enveloped by 5 feet of springy growth. Even the smell of human rot would not escape them. Orchids spread their fragrance through the jungle. Rose apples fall wantonly to the ground. The mountain makes of us children, infants scaling its bony back. The mountain is not an it, as in an object, but it is neither male nor female. It is larger than us. It is beyond us. We cannot retrodict the ways of his mind. The possibilities are infinite, playful, unexpected, quirky, rigid, inventive. The possibilities of the mountain are greater. When we put his mind, his monkey tense arms and short quads, his furrowed brow together with the mountain's jungle streams, rock walls, and guava groves, the possibilities multiply exponentially. There are so many ways to die on the Ko'olau Range, and more tantalizing, so many ways to keep on living. if you are wounded, between the gentle daily rains, the soothing temperatures, the abundant rose apples. As we comb the jungle, we eye broad tea leaves for what they might conceal. Impressions in the mud take the form of the dead body we wish not to see. He could be lying in a pool of water just out of reach. Waterfalls spill between the knuckles of the mountain, forming pools 100 feet off the ground and then again at 50. Perhaps he scaled a wall too high for us. We pushed hard against the outthrust hands of the mountain that seemed to be saying, "Halt, lest you be prepared to follow him all the way." We spent hours trying to scale the upper reaches of the waterfalls, but the rock walls are sheathed in slippery algae. And when we teeter on the rocky lips that we have conquered out of sheer desperation, we feel suddenly how our heads would burst like gourds on the rocks below. And the pool before us is empty. We cannot follow him over the next wall to the pool just beyond. Gravity on the mountain seems to be reversed. Rather than pulling us down, it pulls us up, raking us over its boulders and fallen trees and through its gullies up into its heart with the promise that he is just beyond reach. As hard as we struggle physically to go up, we struggle harder emotionally to go back down. Each night we limp to bed, muddy, scratched, bruised, and empty handed. When we are not scouring the mountain, we scour his letters and memories. Was it an accident? Or had he been walking toward this conclusion his whole life long? In his second to last letter to me, he wrote, "Have had several half experiences on this trip, wonderful hikes and appreciation of natural beauties, and some good exchanges with people that do not feel complete somehow. And then I tell the story about it. And the telling seems to fill the cup to the brim after the fact. And I feel a bit as though I'm lying to my listener, portraying the experience as one that held my interest, whereas the main feature of most of these experiences is their emptiness, the almost spirit confounding flatness of beauties and complexities that seem as though they ought to be sufficient but are not. They do not nourish me. I am half starved in the wilderness." He was 33, the age Christ was when he was crucified. Was it a coincidence or an unconscious resonance that he wrote in his last letter to me, "When I read the Bible, Jesus seems to be saying, 'Close the book, man, stop reading and start living,' and the telling of his story, the unceasing recording and re-recording of his actions seems like an astonishing lack of faith on the part of his would-be followers, a spiritual opacity that would enrage their idol could he witness it, a man completely awake, attempting to awake others. They manage to get their eyelids open, but cannot get out of bed. In my own case, I feel fooled into believing that somehow, if you study math and science hard enough, with enough magic, then you will have adventures, as if A can lead to B. But I think this is false, and I wonder if these stories are told precisely because it never really happens. But more to the point, I suppose, is that if you study A very hard, life starts to look very much like A itself. You start to see things in terms of the language you know well, thereby closing out all of experience that lies outside your known realm, which of course is most experience. When white light, such as sunlight, enters a glass prism, out of the other side comes not white light, but all the colors from red to orange, yellow, green, blue, and violet. Such was the light of his smile. Bright times of light leapt into his flat-lidded eyes that only seconds before had stared as detached as a lizard. His lips were full, his neck taut, his voice was low and resonant as a cello. He formed his words deliberately and spoke with the cadence of a bass drum. His skin was smooth and hairless, and every muscle of his body was cleanly shaped by the hours he spent trying to live each moment fully, by running, climbing, swinging on monkey bars to the delight of children who gathered to watch him in the park at dusk. But his thoughts formed a strangling pattern that kept him fixed and lifeless, no matter how much he swung from the rafters or danced the samba or laughed. And he did all these things more than most people in a lifetime. Standing on that tangled red trail halfway up the mountain, overlooking two bays on an island far out in the dark blue Pacific, we are enacting the metaphor for his life. He is both alive and dead, all around us and nowhere. We are trying to rescue him from his path, and we cannot. Perhaps we should not, because we don't know the whole story, nor ever will. In our minds, he dies 1,000 deaths. He falls and breaks his legs, cracks under a rock, crawls under a rock ledge before he faints. He hits his head and is delirious, lying face to sky, hearing footsteps pass him, but cannot wake up enough to call out. Perhaps he is not quite dead when the wild pigs, invisible to us but for their cloven tracks and low dens, approach him. Or, emerging from the jungle into a marijuana field, he sees the gun in a stranger's hand, and his entire life force swells before his sternum to shield off the bullet that, in a flash, pops his skin and reveals him to be just the bag of blood we all carry on our bones. Or this. He is climbing the King Kong wall without ropes, and when he reaches the top, he turns around and faces the deep blue sea, and for the first time in his life stops thinking, raises his head, smiles, and simply lets go. However it occurred, perhaps the moment when he fell was the shortest distance between himself and life, which he had searched for all his life. Time is slow. If he is still alive, his life is leaving him. We who listened to him all our lives wrap rocks and tea leaves as offerings to the mountain. But 6 days turn into 12, and 12 to 24. We cannot find him. He has disappeared from the earth, leaving no trace, or disappeared into the earth. His parts may be dispersed into the sun, the air, the bellies of pigs, the shining leaves of trees. The mountain may have swallowed him. The mountain may hold him tight to its breast. We stand at the foot of the Ko'olau Range, shading our eyes, looking up. The mountain holds secrets in its peaks, in hidden valleys that no one can reach except a strange, eccentric, strong man driven by a desire to live fully for 1 minute, to be released from the self-entrapping circles from his mind. Dancing warriors are said to emerge at night. They are tall as mountain fingers. They stand straight as rain. They raise their knees in jagged forms. They carry spears. They stamp their bare feet upon the earth until the mouths of stones open wide. They move in slanted lines across the light. Prayer circles are said to be hidden there, where only the natives know, with animals painted in red and black upon the walls. We, the living, sometimes smoke or sleep or drink to dull or enhance ourselves, or break down and weep because we cannot live each moment as fully as he thought we should, as he died trying. It is too much for our finite minds and hearts. I try to understand what has become of him and why. Did he try too hard to taste the atom of which we are made? Because definition never worked, seeking as it does to pin life down and fix it, I tell stories to try to make sense of it, stories that try to encompass it, stories that set it back in motion so that I may keep myself spinning within the spinning fact of our existence. Stories such as this. Voices are babbling, trickling and churning like water over stones. He awakes to find it is his own voice, a new knowing blown over vocal cords into sound. The energy which holds atoms together is akin to human joy. The creative energy of the universe is joy. But atoms stand before him, bright as giant stars in a black sky, but close enough to touch. And though he cannot move, he leaps the atoms part, spinning past him to either side as he enters. We are bodies in motion, organic patterns of energy, stepping uniquely in a dance we know only partially in some minuscule and inexpressible way. We go back to the mainland, kneel in the bathtub, and feel the warm water on our thighs, thinking, he will never feel this again. We make food, cut and hang sheetrock, and must somehow accept the unfathomable that lies between these acts, within these acts. We must somehow incorporate a design as simple and mysterious as the roots that begin to grow from a section of a dead tea plant left lying on the damp ground. For we are bodies in motion, in beauty, in terror, in motion. The mountain stands, and we stand, not understanding what stands between us. All this of which we are made, an absolute physical fact with the unknown unfolding from it, like the clouds rolling up from the peaks like smoldering Pele. Bathed in red petal thin silk, with ribbons of glass hair undulating above her in the air. We pray that the mountain became a prism for his white light, but the mountain is what it is. We stand, the mountain stands, we shade our eyes, we pray. Yeah, that was a tough one. So now moving a little closer to home, Czeslaw Miłosz said, when a writer is born into a family, the family is finished. I think he's a little dramatic. Flaubert said of Madame Bovary, c'est moi. Annie Lamott said that most of the people she writes about don't recognize themselves. But also she said, you own everything that happened to you. Tell your stories. If people want you to write more warmly about them, they should have behaved better. All right. So I believe strongly in telling the truth as you know it. I mean, I think there's a value in sharing our lived experiences. I mean, obviously, there's also a value in having some filter and not saying everything that pops into your mind. But you know, my thinking is mapped out in a short story called "Hitting the Wall." I'm not going to read all of it. I'm just going to read you the first first page because it tells you. Like I said, tells you sort of my thinking. I think this character is very much based on me, and I'm making a little bit of fun of myself here. The first time Cassandra passed through a wall, she hadn't meant to. She had been standing at the edge of a retirement party at the hospital where she worked, feeling as uncomfortable as usual, when she leaned against the wall and fell right through. The wall was still intact, but a gritty residue of plaster coated her tongue. The sour flavor was almost pleasant, and her internal organs felt scrubbed. If it hadn't been so wrong, it would have felt right. She spit the residue into a wastebasket and re-entered the party. No one had noticed she was gone. She had always had boundary issues. The first time she heard the term applied to like human relationships was in her disastrous first marriage. You're invading my boundaries, her then husband shouted one snowy evening as they had been driving around screaming at each other for 20 minutes. They ended up in a cemetery. Boundaries? She said, looking at the snow-covered tombstones that hunched over the high beams. What are those? The marriage ended quickly as it began. She connected to people instantly, feeling the bitter peel and raw substance of them, wanting to skip the small talk and get to the core because time was passing like a speeding bullet about to burst life's membrane. Sure, energy couldn't be destroyed, but once the body, that elaborate conduit of energy called Cassandra, died, the energy would disperse and become unrecognizable to itself. Maybe this was why she felt such a keen separation from people. The phone rarely rang for her, nor did the text messages ping. In fact, if it hadn't been for her second husband and their daughter, she would have been lonely. Together, the three of them lived in a bubble of paradise, feeding each other at dinner time with bare fingers. Not surprisingly, neither her husband nor her daughter blinked that night when she shared with them that she had fallen through the wall earlier that day. From then on, Cassandra began to pass through walls on purpose. She'd press herself against her friends' and colleagues' walls like soft cheese through a grater, and then she'd coalesce on the other side. They never saw her because people only see what they expect. She, on the other hand, saw more than she expected, a myriad of details that people weren't sharing. Usually it was something small, like the fact that Deirdre, a woman that she had shared her office with for 5 years, who wore 3-inch heels that made her calf muscles bulge, picked her nose when Cassandra was out of the office. Or that the director of marketing had a leaky bladder and kept pads in the back of her desk drawer. Other times it was something momentous, like when Barbara, an admission clerk, was quietly making burial arrangements for her husband who had hanged himself. Yet Barbara had greeted her every day with the exact same smile. Each time Cassandra passed through the wall, her organs felt sifted, but her feelings grew more and more clouded, not by what she discovered, but by the fact that so many people assiduously maintained facades. She couldn't understand why. You might restrain yourself, her husband said with a smile at dinner one night when she explained what she was doing. He wiped up the last of the hummus with a carrot stick and held it up for her. But why? She asked, letting him feed her. He shrugged. People like their privacy. But I've never bothered to cover my birthmark, she said, referring to the irregular wine colored splotch on her left jawline. If someone asked me how my day was, I'd tell them if it was crappy. Who is anyone kidding? That's why we love you, her teenage daughter said, still in her bony stage, as she plucked a Concord grape from Cassandra's plate and squeezed it until it burst into her mouth. So I'll stop that story there, but that kind of gives you like that's kind of my philosophy of life. Why are we hiding? It's like that Charlie Brown thing where they all run away and they're hiding anything, and Charlie Brown, and he's saying, "Who are we hiding from?" And of course, they were hiding from him. um, oops, I just. So how am I doing for time? Let's see. It is 1:20. All right, I think I can. Yeah. All right, so I have time for these other two stories. Um, so the story that I wrote next is about I have there I'm one of 5 children, and I'm not very close to my older sisters, and it's something that I've pursued them my whole life. It feels like I used to be close to my oldest, but never really close to my second oldest sister. And it's just something I could never accept. And so this story is kind of writing about that. And it's really based on a series of conversations we had over time. So it's very abbreviated and very truncated. And I think this story is almost really more of an allegory than a story. Like the people are a little bit flat, which is also something I like to do in my stories. But I think when it comes to writing about something that has upset you, I think your job, even if you're writing about somebody you know, especially if you're writing about somebody you know, but even if you've invented the character, your job as a writer is to kind of be kind to your characters. Like you shouldn't be writing to put your characters down. Even the antagonists of the story, you're really supposed to give a fair shake as a writer. Part of that is because the story would be predictable. Like if you created a character that where one person's all good and one person's all bad, it's very, very predictable and a little bit boring what's going to happen because, um, so you want to create a good character's got a little bad and a bad character's got a little good because then it's like interesting. And in fact, John Gardner in his book, The Art of Fiction, said all true suspense is a dramatic representation of the anguish of moral choice. I thought, oh yeah, suspense about the anguish of moral choice. So I wrote this story. I'm not sure that I was really fair to my sister here. I think as I reread this, I was like, I think I need to rewrite this. But
You'll have time.
Yeah, I'll have time when I retire. Yeah. So it's called My Sister's Labyrinth. By the time I found my second sister, she had built a wall around her house that obscured its stained glass windows. I circled and circled and finally found an opening hidden by a rose bush trained to the wall by many ties. The opening led into a boxwood labyrinth where, at intervals, gardens bloomed. For 20 years, I walked the labyrinth trying to get to her house. When I finally found her front door, I knocked. She answered, her brows pursed in concentration, the lines around her mouth squared. It is so hard for me when family visits, she says, because my boundaries are so thin. I pondered this. Let's at least have lunch before I go. I require an appointment. I have a husband and 3 children, and I will have to see where I can fit you in. The path to the street turned out to be only a few short steps from the door. She met me at a cafe 3 days later. When I hugged her, my arms, expecting to find the resistance of flesh, closed too tightly around her bones. But she hugged me back with surprising strength. We can never truly know another person, she said after we sat down. I thought I saw something move in the depths of her eyes, like an eel swimming through the fathoms of green water. It's not that difficult, I said. You spend time together. Our tea was served. Hers was lavender and breath of hummingbird. We are all essentially alone, she said. She wore a jacket hand woven from the silk of milkweed and trimmed in moss. When she sipped her tea, wisps of piney lavender and something that beat faster than the eye could see drifted my way. You don't understand, she said after a pause. I could if you explained, I said. Oh, I lost my place here. We are different, she said. Yes, but still within the realm of human. If we spend time together, we could get to know each other. The food arrived. Her order was canapes of violet wrapped in rose petals tied with fennel fronds. Mine was brown rice and stir-fried vegetables. Why are you so fixated on family? She asked, spearing a canape with a tiny glittering fork and cutting a piece the size of her pinky nail. Why not spend time with others? Because we share blood and history, I said, heaping a forkful of rice and broccoli into my mouth. That is too close for me. You might get used to it, I said, filling my mouth again. I am not willing to change for you. She wafted the scent of her food toward herself and inhaled delicately. That's where I was like, that was a little mean. I should take that out. I changed for you, I said. It took me 20 years to find your front door, and when you asked me to make an appointment, I did. I didn't ask you to my front door. I didn't ask you to make an appointment. I just told you my requirements and you decided to accommodate. Yes, I said. Will you ever be willing to accommodate me when I ask? I will not change myself for anyone, she said again. It is not my job to meet your needs. It's your job. Will it always be this way? Always. That is the last I saw her. I have taken up residence at a house across the street where I watch others come and go from her labyrinth by appointment. The long, bare branches of her yew bushes twist like dancers in green shawls. Sometimes, when I leave my house, I find a scarf tied to a low branch, a blend of blues and oranges intricate as oil on water, or woven with butterfly wings frozen by winter come too soon. I know she's left a gift for me, so I wear it. That one, so I try what started to happen in that story. So yeah, I thought I was being a little unfair to her, and if I was being more fair, I would have maybe made my character a little more invasive, like showing up and not knocking on the door, so that you could see why she was annoyed. Um, and But as I wrote the story, she began to morph. When I started to write about what she was eating and what she was wearing, she began to turn into somebody else who was not my sister, and who I think really ends up being nature. And interestingly enough, of the two sisters, the one sister I can never, I keep trying to accept that there's non-relationship, and I just can't accept it. But with her, I can. Like I can accept there's a distance, and that's okay. And I think part of it was the writing of this story. Somehow she became this, like a tree. And like, you can't ask a tree to take your hand. It's like you just got to take the tree the way it is. And and I have that sense of acceptance with her, interestingly enough. Um, but this last story that I'm going to read to you, I think I'm not going to tell you what it's about. What I was thinking would be cool, I'll tell you after I read it. But what I was thinking was cool is that I would send around some index cards and pencils, and you tell me what you think it's about. I've told you it's about the relationship with my sister, but you can maybe see if you can get more specific. And then I'll tell you what I thought it was about. Because obviously it's going to be about different things, hopefully.
Same sister or different sister?
Different sister.
Okay.
So sometimes my stories just come from like I'm having an interaction with someone, and then a metaphor comes to my mind. It's like, this is like, this relationship is like this, and here's the metaphor. And then I go, what would happen if that was really true? Um, so, let's play that metaphor out. Let's make it real. And anyway, the opal maker. Oh, here I have a script that's a little easier. When they cracked my sister's ribs open and slid the curved bone blades back under her skin to repair her damaged heart, they found me tucked inside, wedged between her lungs. Up until then, I had not known how her ribs cradle gouged me. The head surgeon was Russian, so nothing much surprised him. It happens more often than you would think, he said. Often, once one of her valves ripped because it was pumping blood for two instead of one. As he finished the sentence, his left eye drilled into me as black and shiny as the word one. You might think it's hard to breathe when you're living inside someone else. It is, but surprisingly, you adjust. Your mind goes hazy, your hearing muted. You close your eyes and lie still, warm and bound. You grow to love being bound. You attune yourself to the other's heartbeat, the gurgling of the stomach, the burbling sounds from outside that muzzy your ears until you forget there ever was an outside. Sounds shine in your mind like light through stained glass. Such bright colors, how they bloom and swirl. You grow to love, love, love this body to the exclusion of your own. You press and probe and drill and wind yourself into every tiny space it affords until you are ripping it apart at the same time as you are holding it together. So I can't say I was glad when they pulled me out. Not at all. I hadn't developed very far, my limbs flat and folded in on themselves, a plant caught under a stone, my skin opaque, ridged as a waterlogged lizard. The light pierced my cranium and my eyes opened raw as wounds. The air sanded my skin. The cold moved in like the enemy. They peeled me out, repaired her torn valve, and slid her ribs back into place and stitched her up. If she felt empty inside, she didn't say. She went back to her job of sorting gemstones, and I became useless. I couldn't walk, couldn't feed myself, couldn't think my own thoughts. The bright lights in my mind went out, and what I found there instead were pale mushrooms. For a long time after they took me out, all I could think about was snipping those stitches and crawling back in. In fact, that's how I learned to walk again, by flopping onto the floor as soon as she went to bed and pressing my arms and knees against the ground until my muscles grew fiber and could hold me up. At first, my fingers flew haphazardly as I twisted them through the scissor handles, but eventually they began to obey my thoughts. And I marveled at how the twin blades opened and then, by pressing themselves against each other, delineated an edge, the power of separation, a revelation. In the darkness, since I didn't need light to see, I hunched over her sleeping form and pulled back the covers as soundlessly and deftly as I had moved inside her. But to my shock, her flesh had knitted back together. It had taken me too long to get there. The scar gleamed in the moonlight, a talisman of individuation, a shield closing me out of her forever. I was devastated, but I was standing. What a miracle of balance standing was. My muscles, bone, mind, sinew, even my back, that magnificent curved snake with its tiny tail wagging between my hips, all adjusting and attuning to each other. Excuse me. Even that, the tiny tail of my spine attuning each other, speaking their own tiny words quicker than light, a minute orchestration of falling and pushing back, teetering and balancing, letting go and holding on. I dropped the scissors and stepped out into the garden, the pale flowers glowing in the moonlight. Scent was another discovery. So much information and complexity feathering your lungs, igniting memories. I inhaled and exhaled again and again, loving how I could stroke myself on the inside simply by breathing. With my skin now smooth and toughened, the air felt like another soft body enveloping me, but this body allowed me to move whichever way I willed. That's when she began to hate me. She didn't say it, but I could feel it in her gray eyes the next morning, her freckled skin, the way her mind went blank whenever she sat across from me, as if I wasn't worth even thinking thoughts about, the way she hid the gems she was sorting whenever I entered the room. After those first giant steps, progress slowed to tortuously tiny increments, so I grew more frustrated. And whenever I cried, she would reach for her own throat to strangle it off. I would have to dig my nails between her clenched fingers and white throat to peel them away, or else watch her splutter and choke. The night I woke to find her hands around my throat, I left. Do I miss her? Yes. Do I sometimes wish that someone else would live my life for me? Who wouldn't? But the smell of sunshine on the dusty sidewalk in spring, of flowers and cat's fur, and sound, tire tread rolling on pavement, and laughter of children flow into the skull as cool and crisp as water. Now I sit on a street corner in a busy part of town. People bring me their stories and fragments of thought. I cup the sound in my hands and I press my palms together hard. And if I press my palms together hard enough between my thighs, the sounds turn into opals, not perfectly round, a little oblong and misshapen, but silky smooth and shining with interior light. They swallow the opals, and the colors shine from their eyes. Then, for just a moment, I feel connected to them, and we all become light, illuminating each other. Thank you. Thank you. So, yeah, pass your cards, let's see, towards the center. You know anything? It was like, what do you think the story is really about? Like, what kind of relationship is that? Yes, yes. A score growing up out of codependence. Yes, it's definitely a codependent relationship. Got another one? Just the pain of growing up. It's true. It is a process of individuation. Dependent relationship, I think, is what it says. Yeah. Anyone got something different? We change into something we can't know while wanting something more. That's a nice one. For pain of hearing, oh, I did that one already. A mother. Yeah, it's about a mother. That's interesting.
It's not mine.
Yeah. Yeah, growing up while dependent on a sibling, being, unfortunately, I can't read it, being hated for living one's own life. Yeah. How the sister smothered you. It's about self-actualization and essential, that as essential to the creative, to the writer. Oh, interesting. Growing up in your sister's shadow, control and birth. I was thinking birth control. No, control and birth.
That's not mine.
You grew up in your sister's shadow. Toxic, somebody says. Let's see. I can't read that one. I couldn't quite read that one. Interdependence. Yep. And the jealousy of those who hold you back. Dependence, getting used to change. Pros and cons of independence. Nice. Yeah. I know some people had wondered if it was like maybe about a cancer, like the cancer didn't like being removed. So yeah, so in that story, definitely what it was about was, so that was my oldest sister, and we were, I was one of 5 children, and my mother, even though they stayed married, my parents stayed married, she more or less raised 5 children alone while working full time as a professor, as an English professor. How did she do that? Well, as often happens in big families, she got people to help her. So we had, my grandmother lived with us, but also she kind of often would put my older sisters in charge of the younger kids. And my older sisters really resented that. And so it was hard for them, like, for us to redefine that relationship. There kept being this, the thing of, she was like, let go of me. And I'm like, no, you let go of me. Like, she's like, stop hanging on to me. And it's like, I'm not hanging on to you, kind of that kind of thing. Like, we couldn't tell. And I thought, oh, this is like, I grew up inside her body. And then she did actually have a heart operation. She had a torn valve. And and so I don't know, that's where it came, like, oh yeah, what if they found me in that thing? So I did share these with my sisters before. When you're writing them, it's better not to think about publishing them. It's better just to write the story and not worry about it. I figured, well, they'll never get published. It's fine. I'm safe. I can say whatever I want. But then when I found a place for them, I thought I better send this to my relatives. So with my second sister, the labyrinth one, she was like, I thought we had worked this out. Like, what? Why are you still thinking about it? I thought we had solved this problem. And I said I did, because what I have found in life is very hard to write about something when you're in the midst of it, because you don't understand it. You're being tossed around by it. And in fact, the only time I can really write about something autobiographical is when I've worked my way through it. So it's like, yes, that's the only reason I wrote the story, is I'm over it. With the opal maker, I think I did a better job of being fair. I think when I started to write about, the sister that's based on me being, trapped inside this other body, I thought, wouldn't it be creepy if she really liked it in there, and if she wanted to get back in? And my sister, when she read it, the oldest sister said, I never tried to kill you. And I was like, I know, it was a metaphor. And and I said, but then you notice that the character that's based on me isn't completely innocent. It's not there. She's very much part of the problem. So I felt I was more successful with that story than the other one. So yeah, that's what I have for you today. Thank you so much for coming. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. Yeah. Questions, thoughts?
Lie happily in your new life, Lale.
Thank you. Yes, I am really gonna, my plan is read every morning. I just read when my brain still is fresh and works, and then write. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. Read and then write. Yeah.
Well, you've used a lot of dialectical inquiry that opposites all the way through. So you've been conflicted for a number of times, which is great.
Yeah.
But my question is, what might be conflicting you now? Where is the tension? Is there
Mm.
any?
There's
Are you
always
denying
tension.
it?
There's always tension. I don't know. That may be more than I want to share. You'll have to read my next story for that. Yeah.
Have you ever lost a friend or family member's relationship because of writing?
Well, probably not because of writing. Like it was destined to be lost. Um, yeah. I am still trying to work out with these two sisters, like I'm trying to let go. I'm trying to stop being the pursuer and just see where that takes me. You know. So, like I said, with the one sister, the labyrinth one, for some reason I get it, and with the other sister, like I don't get it. I think we were closer, so it's harder to let go. Other questions? Yeah.
As a writer, do you have to like almost trick yourself in your writing sometimes? Like you say you have like struggles with ADD, and sometimes like personally writing, I'm just like, oh, I have to write it and I have to get this done.
Yeah.
Do you have to, or do you have to like get yourself to write, or is it like an outlet?
Yes, I mean both. A lot of times it's I have to get myself to write, and so I have a lot of techniques. Sometimes, I mean, a lot of times also it does just come out. Like I find, I look up an hour later and I've been writing for an hour, and I'm like, oh, what happened? But most of the times, so one of the things I do to trick myself is set a timer and just like I'm only going to write for 10 minutes, and if it goes well I can keep going, and if it doesn't go well then I can stop. So setting up like a habit, so one of the things I found, and there's a wonderful book called Around the Writer's Block by Roseanne Bain, and desire will only take you so far, and willpower will peter out in 6 weeks. Like it just willpower does not last, but habit is probably the most powerful force in our lives. So that's why they keep telling you, if you want to write, set up a habit, set up a regular time when you write, because eventually your brain will start showing up. If you show up to the desk at 7 o'clock every morning, your brain will eventually start showing up of its own accord. Like, hey, it's 7 o'clock, time to write. So writing fast is a good thing. Writing fast. Um, uh, it took me a long time also to learn to follow the energy. So if you're writing and it's feeling like, ugh, I don't want to do this, then you're not, go a different direction. Like listen to that. That's not laziness. That's actually your brain telling you something important about, like, I don't like this direction. I have doubts about this direction. So try a different direction, try a different point of view, and you may find that it feels, and then I used to get into these arguments with myself. Well, I don't know, is there a reason why, when do we do backstory, or when should we do flashbacks, and what's the rule about, and it's like, that's not the point. Follow the energy. If you start to write it and it feels exciting, go in that direction, don't ask why. So to set a timer, follow the energy, um, listen to the writing blocks. Oh, and here's another one. If you're having a doubt, usually we are. And I do find, particularly when I was younger, I think part of our job as writers and thinkers and learners is to hear what our mind is telling us. And when you're younger, it's hard to hear. Like you have all these thoughts that are going on under the surface that you don't even know are happening. Um, and I know this because there used to be summers, like I spent like a summer at my dad's house, and he never talked, and he had really very little interest in talking. And so my experience was, I've got nothing to say. I've got nothing, my mind is blank. But when I got back to school, all of a sudden I had tons to say as soon as I was in front of people who wanted to hear. And so what I realized is that I had been thinking but not hearing. So listen to the thoughts. Oh, and the other advice is, if you can't write it, write about it. Yeah, take notes on it. Any other thoughts? I know people have to get to their class, so Why don't we call? Oh, one question over there. Yes.
Are there any stories or poems of yours you specifically recommend?
Say that again. Are there any?
Are there any stories or poems of yours that you would specifically recommend?
She's your favorite child, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't do that. It really depends on what you're into. Like if you're into kind of more deeply psychological stuff,
I guess like based on your siblings.
oh, like my novel Blue Woman Burning is very autobiographical and very like inward turning and examining, and it's another story about trying to come of age. My other two books are more outward looking. You know, so.
And what's the next one?
I don't know. I think I'm going to keep on going with the short form. I love the liberation and the freedom of the short form. So I think I'm just going to work on short forms. But there is a real pleasure to being involved in a novel. It's like one night stands versus long term relationships. Like a novel is like a marriage, and there's something very comforting about that, being in the midst of that marriage. So I'm waiting for that idea to come to me. I thought maybe I'd write about a young woman who's pregnant and her family, she wants to have an abortion, their family's forcing her to have the child.
Is her family or the government?
What?
Is her family or the government?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Is part of the draw of writing a novel, as it is in reading it, that you created a world and you don't want to leave yet. You want to live in this place for a while. Whereas short stories, it's like a weekend
Yeah.
vacation or something.
Yeah.
You can live here for a while.
Yeah.
Is that true for writing?
Yeah, I mean, by the time I'm done with my novels, I've always been ready to leave them. Like I'm usually really sick of them because I've rewritten them so many times. And again, I think with having ADD, we don't like repetition, and so. Um, but yeah, when you're in the midst of it, and I think the birthing of the first draft is the hardest thing for me anyway. That some people find that the most fun thing, the most free thing, but for me, the white page and the inventing is the hardest, and it's coming out kind of awkward and bad, and I hate that. But once we get into the revision, very comforting place to be. Because you have a sense of direction of where you're going. It's like now I have revised chapter 1 and now I have to revise chapter 2, and there isn't that what am I going to do today kind of thing. So, yeah.
Speaking of ADD, I have a son who, well, he was never diagnosed, but anyway, he's very auditory, and I was wondering if any of your works are available for people to listen to.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I put Blue Woman Burning. I recorded that, so that is available on Kobo. You'll see it on my website. There's a bunch of independent audiobook things. It's not in Audible or Amazon yet. I think it'll end up there eventually, but I'm boycotting them. So if it never shows up there, yay. But yeah, Blue Woman Burning, I did it. I read it. So, and my husband helped record it. Yeah. Thank you. And actually, there is an audiobook of this too. I forgot. I put this on. Yeah. That you'll find pretty sure that is in Amazon. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for all of you who came out and you traveled far. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.